Welcome to episode 258 of the Working Fans Podcast. It has been a couple weeks, but we are brought to you by Game Up Hard Hydration. Game Up Hard Hydration it's like your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's so much better. Dave, give them the rundown on those facts.
Oh man, it's only 110 calories. It's low carb. And hey, we got 4 great flavors. We got fruit punch, orange, lemon lime, and grape. So get yourself some Game Up.
Now, it has been a couple weeks since we joined you, and we wanted to talk about a couple things. One of the things is such a great build up to SummerSlam, and it really peaked in the last couple weeks with Rhea making her return to Raw. And at first, this storyline with Dom and Liv, I thought was a great placeholder for Rhea being gone, but it seems to have gained a life of its own. What do you think about the return of Rhea and how it kind of frames this whole feud?
It's such a giant storyline right now. I think it's got the interest peaked of everybody that's watching Raw and SmackDown. Like, I think is it the top storyline? I mean, obviously the Bloodline is probably still the top storyline, Drew and Punk, but man, this is right there. Like, people are so excited for this. Rhea is such a star. And what I find interesting about it is that Liv Morgan, I thought, was really getting a babyface reaction until Rhea showed up. And now everybody wants to cheer Rhea. But when you watch the segment this week, Dom curses out Liv, and then the fans immediately felt bad for Liv. You know, it's like taking these people on a ride. Like, they don't know what they want, you know? Like, it's interesting. I thought Liv was a great heel in this segment, basically saying, gorgeous men like Dom don't go for girls like you. They go for girls like me. You know, I thought that was kind of walking that line of saying things that people don't really say anymore. Like, hey, you're a bit of a bigger girl. I'm Liv Morgan. I'm just model type. And I thought they walked that line to get that heel heat. But then when Dom ripped into her, I thought they were sympathetic. But ultimately, I see this at SummerSlam. Dom is going to screw over Rhea, and Dom and Liv are going to have such mega heat from this.
Now, do you think this storyline is indicative of how things could go once they go to Netflix and have those restrictions taken off them a little bit? Because it is a little bit more, I want to say, an adult storyline, but that almost not in a pornographic way, but it's bringing in more mature themes. It's definitely handling it better than WWE would have handled it in years past.
Yeah.
And like you said, they've made another compelling storyline to go up there with Punk and Drew McIntyre, to go up there with the Bloodline, to go up there with Gunther going for that title, to go up there with Sammy defending that Intercontinental title. You've got so many different things that are really, coming to light right now that is awesome.
Everybody's really established right now on Raw and SmackDown, and it's a good time. And I feel like Rhea is poised, if she wasn't already, to be the biggest star in women's wrestling right now. I just think that she's on another level, and I think this is rising up Liv stock a lot too. And Dom continues,
Now, next week, we are going to do our full SummerSlam preview. But overall, what do you think of how all these matches have been developing as we go into SummerSlam?
I mean, the main matches, Rhea and Liv, for SummerSlam, great. Which, by the way, I did want to point out, I do think we will see more racier content on Netflix to answer that question. As far as the matches at SummerSlam playing up there, like CM Punk and Drew, with Punk just getting cleared, this might be the hottest match that everybody's looking forward to in the company. They did such a great job telling this story. I would say the weakest looking match in a way is Cody and Solo. And I don't consider that a weak match. I just feel like we rushed Solo to this point a little bit. And I think more people might be interested in seeing, is The Rock going to come out? Is Roman going to come out? And what's going to happen next? I feel like almost like nobody expects Cody to lose the title here. So it's kind of more of a like, what's going to happen next? But I would say for the most part, this show is really built up well. Gunther has been a tremendous heel. That line calling Damian Priest street trash and talking about his parents having him live on the street. They didn't consider him a good enough investment, and living on the street is a choice. Like, that's just awesome heel stuff. I'm sorry. Like, tremendous.
And then he doubled down on it again this week, which led to those two battling. And that's a match that, I might have been looking forward to a little bit going into SummerSlam, but I feel like that really heated it up so much more. And, the WWE main roster is on a high right now. We just watched Slammiversary last weekend, and we've seen how the TNA NXT collaboration has been so good going forward. And I would say maybe a little understated at the pay-per-view. It was great to see the No Quarter Catch crew.
Yeah.
But we haven't gone live the last few weeks, so we haven't had live reactions to what we've thought about this growing NXT business. So how do you like the business between NXT and TNA?
I love it. I think this is the most interesting NXT has been in a long time for me. I think they've done such a great job of really helping raise the stock of a lot of these TNA wrestlers. Like, usually, the TNA guys would come in or someone would come in. Maybe they get some promo time. Maybe we build up to one match, but everybody's getting matches. They're in storylines that make sense. Like, you know what I mean? Trey Miguel looks like he wants to retire, and then the Rascals come out and reunite in NXT.
Do you mean Wesley looks like he wants to retire?
Who did I say?
Trey Miguel.
Oh, yeah, Wesley. My apologies. I was thinking about how Trey's never actually been in WWE, and I was thinking about how Zach Wentz was like Nash Carter at one point. So whatever. At the end of the day, though, it really does make sense that all these guys are together. I love the match we had with Axiom and Nathan Frazier. I love that. I love that TNA wrestlers are getting wins in this situation. They're not just being buried. And Joe Henry keeps coming off as a star. Joe Henry's going to do a concert next week on NXT. Like, this is just going to rise this guy's stock even more. It's great stuff. I mean, this is not completely related, but Bloodsport this weekend, we got Shayna Baszler, Charlie Dempsey, the Creed brothers. Like, I just really love that the WWE is, mixing talent and sending talent with other promotions and other wrestlers. And I think this is the most interesting TNA's been in a while too.
And I mean, we just talked about SummerSlam, and you have storyline after storyline after storyline building. With TNA coming in, it's not just Jordynne Grace enters the Rumble or Jordynne Grace goes for the NXT Women's title. You've got the Rascals reuniting. You have Charlie Dempsey going to TNA and affecting things there. Who knows what could happen? Moose just dropped the TNA championship. Could Moose make an appearance in WWE? Arguably someplace where he could fit great. Once upon a time, he would have fit perfectly. But this is his chance to come in and develop. And that's not even a storyline we're seeing yet. Joe Hendry is getting to make appearances in NXT, and they're really playing up the gimmick. Like, it was 2 weeks ago at this point, Booker T, was it Booker T that went to say Joe Hendry's name? And then, or Vic went to say it. Booker T stopped him. The second they say Joe Hendry's name, you get the entrance. And then the same thing happens backstage where they're talking about him and he appears. It's one of those things where it's got that WWE cartoonness about it, but it also really fills out the persona and the character of Joe Hendry and makes him an important figure. So I've really been enjoying it a whole lot. NXT has got to be like my go-to WWE show for the last couple weeks. And it just keeps getting better. And before we talk about things getting worse, we had another interesting comparison that you wanted to do.
Yeah. Terry Gordy or Ron Simmons, who was better in the ring? I think I always think of like Doc and Gordy when I'm not thinking of the Freebirds. And when I think of guys like Doc, I think of that football rap background, and Ron Simmons and his football rap background. They're explosive. I thought, man, gotta show Gordy some love here. So let's see, let's compare Gordy and Simmons and see what people think. Most people picked Ron Simmons. At the end of the day,
all-star athlete, world champion,
first black world champion WCW. Great run in WCW and WWE with APA, with Bradshaw, the Nation of Domination, tag team champion in both promotions. And I can see why. I personally, though, if we're just looking at in-ring ability, I think I'll give a slight nod to Terry Gordy. I think Ron is a better athlete. That's not to slight Terry. I think if we're talking in-ring ability, like wrestling a match, I think Gordy has a little bit more exciting matches. But I think Ron Simmons was a better athlete, and obviously he had that moment where he beat Vader for the championship, which I think just kind of, if I'm talking about all-time great moments, that might be one to tops it.
I mean, it's tough when you talk about something like this because obviously you think about all the great moments that Ron Simmons has had over his career. Ron Simmons had a longer career, so I think we have a lot more memories to pull from.
Yeah.
But you hinted at it earlier, but look at how Terry Gordy Dark Side of the Ring. Right. You hear old timers talk about the natural ability Terry Gordy had as a young teenager. And you almost have to give him, well, it's tough because he cut his career short with that overdose on a plane that really messed him up. Yeah. And much like we talk about the British Bulldog wrestling on crack at Wembley Stadium, how long did Terry Gordy wrestle with a brain injury? And he might not have given us his best, but he was still pretty good in the ring. And just considering that natural ability, I would have to give it to Terry Gordy. But that's just knowing the history of everything.
I just think in-ring wise, if we're talking about just wrestling ability in matches, I would go Terry. I think Simmons was a better athlete just because of the explosiveness and the strength. And like I said, charisma would be hard to argue, but Simmons just had so many great charismatic moments, I think, with the win over Vader. But also, Simmons coined that phrase, damn, and that's over as hell now, too. So, overall package, I guess I'll go with Simmons, but in the ring, bell to bell, I'll go with Terry.
Yeah, it's such a tough comparison because you've got the short career versus the long career. And to me, that's what makes it difficult. But just looking at the facts of it, it's got to be Gordy. Both members of famous tag teams, both in WCW at a time when WCW, I would say, was at its greatest. Just two legendary names in the game. Also, Terry Gordy had all that time in Japan. And when it comes to wrestling, when you look at wrestling in Japan, that is, it's a bucket list item for a lot of wrestlers. We talked to Stefan Epic about how going to Japan was such a big deal for him. We've heard other wrestlers talk about that. Now, did Ron Simmons do much time in Japan now that I'm talking about it? I don't know if he did extended runs like Gordy, but he might have made some appearances.
I know this because I've recently been watching some old WCW, and I know he did one of those New Japan WCW super shows. I can't remember if he beat Scott Hall, who was doing the Diamond Stud gimmick at the time, or who it was, but he did have a match on one of those, at least one of those, maybe two.
Yeah, there's really no wrong answer for this. It's just which side of the coin you view it on. So, we're both in agreement for Terry Gordy. And before we get to the title of this episode, because I made a little presumption when I made this title, but you mentioned Bloodsport, and I got to ask, when is that?
It is this Sunday at 7:00 in Brooklyn.
Oh, shit. Okay. So hopefully we get out of work. Hopefully I get out of work early. You'll be out of work in plenty of time.
Actually, already made plans that if you wanted to watch this, I was actually into watching this. So I was just very
right.
Look at this overall card, and I looked at the time at 7 p.m. I was like, okay.
We'll contact a certain friend of the show. Maybe we'll get some ice cream sandwiches or something together. Kayfabe, brother. But the main event, the title, the reason why, I'm going to assume some people click this link. Blood and Guts was this Wednesday. Dave and I have had such active schedules during the summer that we get a little bit of talk here and there. This is a match that, surprisingly, this is the one thing that the group chat didn't spoil that night, which I had to, when I got home, there was a certain spoiler that I had to catch up on. We finally had the debut of Camille. She's been rumored to be in AEW for a while. I think a good addition to the women's division, but that's what was talking about what was good on this show. Dave, do you want to give your opinions first to Blood and Guts, or should I?
Tell you real quick, even about the show, like other than there was a little cartoonish thing in the beginning with Osprey and Marvez. Osprey.
That was cartoonish, but I didn't mind that. The cartoonish shit that I did mind was at the end of this.
Yes, so I was gonna say I didn't mind it up until that point. Other than I'm nitpicking a little bit. I thought it was a good show. I was enjoying the show. I thought the matches were fine. There might have been a few matches that didn't matter, but I mean, it was a good show. I was enjoying it. And Blood and Guts, I was fine with for a little while. I was enjoying it. You know, we're leading to it. All right, let's get to it. For me, it's the ending. All right, it's there's some other stuff we could talk about, but the ending is what really, really bothered me. Why is a babyface threatening to set a heel on fire if he doesn't get a title shot? And then by the way, and then the heel's partner, who's also a heel, has to be the sympathetic. No, we'll quit. But before we do that, we have this clunky sort of way, like, you got your title shot, you got a title shot. And then the babyface is like, well, I'm still going to do it unless you quit, because that's the only way this ends. Oh, I quit. It's like, it was anticlimactic, and to me, it just didn't make sense. Like, I thought it made Jungle Boy look more like a babyface.
Yeah, I went back and forth. There were moments where I hated this Blood and Guts. I wasn't enjoying it the way that it just felt like it was so much attention on the Bucks. And then I tried taking myself out of that mindset. And I'm like, oh, they're just building themselves as bigger heels. So when the babyface things happen, that's when things get big. And then I don't know how you overbook a War Games match.
Yeah.
But you've got Swerve handcuffed to the outside of the cage. Then Jeff Jarrett comes to the save, who has the key to unlock the handcuffs. But then Prince Nana is coming down with wire cutters.
Right.
And that was one bit of overbooking. And then you do the fire bit at the end. And if you want to see the fire bit done right, look up Battle Riot 2. Contra comes into the ring. Eddie Kingston's done it before too. To make the whole fire thing seem real, you pour the gasoline on. You get ready to light them on fire. Somebody interrupts. The way that Darby poured the gasoline on Jungle Boy, had the lighter in his hand, walks to one side of the ring to get the mic, to do all this on the mic. If you're expressing yourself well enough, you don't have to put any words into it. You just have Nick get in the way, or Matt, whichever Jackson it was, and give Darby what he wants and just quit. Kind of like the Christian Cage, Adam Copeland match, where that was kind of a lame I quit ending, but that one was done better. It was just very clunky, and to me, it made what should have been a great match concept so lame.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you hear all this about Tony Khan not being able to book, and usually I won't jump on that train, but this was a hot mess near the end.
Yeah, I had to feel like that stuff with Swerve. I almost wonder if that was just they were legit having problems with the handcuffs, because that made no sense at all. But yeah, when you take in that mess right there, whether on purpose or whether planned, with the actual planned ending, yeah, it really did make for a very clunky, very strange War Games that I just didn't really enjoy at the end of it. I would say it's my least favorite of all the AEW War Games. I won't say overall. I have to go back and see. I think there's been a few bad War Games, but it's definitely towards the bottom.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say that once Swerve got in that ring and started taking it to the Elite, that part looked great. I had no problem with that. That was awesome. But it was just everything else was just so garbage that it was hard to enjoy, and it's tough because War Games, one of my favorite match stipulations of all time. It's classic Dusty creation, and they really ran it into the ground.
It's funny that Jeff Jarrett has been one of the brighter spots in this company lately, like just some of his promos and stuff talking about Owen, and even on this show, he had a moment. Not just obviously he was trying to get the handcuffs up, but like with Danielson, where he was trying to fire up Danielson. It's just funny with everything going wrong that I can't help it pops in my head that Jeff Jarrett is like a guy that's been like cooking a little bit more lately.
100%. And when everything's going wrong, especially during the summer, you want to make sure you have that cooler. You want to make sure it's packed with ice, and you want to make sure it has some Game Up.
If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor store.
All you goddamn wrestling fans out there, listen, Old Black Bart has got a book. It's called Wrestle Black Bart. It's got some dadgum good stories in there about some dadgum good wrestlers.
Read stories of Dusty Rhodes, the Von Erich, Scott Casey, Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, Mr. Fuji, Ron Bass, Bruiser Brody, Mike Davis, the Grappler, and many others.
And I guarantee you one thing. That it'll be the best dadgum read you've had in a long, long time.
Get your book today at Russellville.com or on Amazon. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.
Read about the Northern Wrestling Federation in the book presented by Russellville.com, The Pro Wrestling Vault, Volume 2. Hear the story of Roger Ruffin, the man who trained Carl Anderson, the Monster Abyss, Jordan Clearwater, Chris Harris, and Jillian Hall.
Plus 45 other short stories including Jazz, Bobby Eaton, Kamala, Thunder Rosa, Mario Mancini, Scott Casey, PJ Black, Kerry Morton, Sal Renaro, Jeremiah Plunkett, Colby Carino, Bam Bam Malone, and many others.
Get your book today at Russellville.com. Russellville, it's where wrestling lives.